We are still over a month out from the launch of Trump's second term, but he's wasted no time getting his army in place. Over the past week alone, he has announced his nominations for some of the top positions of power in the U.S. government under his administration, and they have ranged from deeply unserious, like his Attorney General nominee Matt Gaetz, to outside-the-box picks like Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense, to bizarre picks like neocon Marco Rubio for Secretary of State. But none has infuriated the left, like his appointment of RFK Jr. for Health Secretary. Last week, Trump posted online, "I am thrilled to announce Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the United States Secretary of Health and Human Services, HHS. For too long, Americans have been crushed by the industrial food complex and drug companies who have engaged in deception, misinformation, and disinformation when it comes to public health. The safety and health of all Americans is the most important role of any administration, and HHS will play a big role in helping ensure that everybody will be protected from harmful chemicals, pollutants, pesticides, pharmaceutical products, and food additives that have contributed to the overwhelming health crisis in this country. Mr. Kennedy will restore these agencies to the traditions of the gold standard scientific research and beacons of transparency to end the chronic disease epidemic and to make America great and healthy again." That tweet has launched what is now being called the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again. And I don't know, I'm pretty positive. Last time I checked, like 5 minutes ago, banning pesticides, pollutants, and harmful chemicals was like one of the pet issues of the left. Like this is peak crunchy granola mom territory. It's very Erin Brockovich. So why the weeping and gnashing of teeth over this nominee in particular and over the MAHA movement? We're going to talk about it today. First, I'm Hannah Cox with Base Politics. Welcome to my channel where I bring you my politically homeless takes on politics and culture. Before we dive in today, make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you have not already, and of course, ring that notification bell so you never miss one of my episodes. All right, guys, before we get into today's topic, I have to make a little disclaimer here, which is that I have not been a fan of RFK Jr. I had an encounter with him, I guess, a year and a half ago now when I was at Freedom Fest in Memphis. There was this private event that he and his teams were putting on for what was supposed to be 200 or so people to try to convince libertarians to give him a shot. This is when he was still running on the Democratic side of the ticket. And I went to this event and it was one of the worst events of my life. Like we had been on our feet all day. We had been making public appearances. We'd been speaking. I was starving. I was ready for a glass of wine. It took forever to get into the venue. It was a hot mess. And once we finally got in there, I got one glass of wine and then they shut the bar down. They wouldn't serve us food. They didn't end up serving food until like 10 p.m. And they made everybody stand around. There weren't enough tables or chairs, even close for the people that were there. So they had everybody standing around and they do this fireside talk with RFK Jr. And I was like, dude, I don't care what you have to say. Like, I am starving. So I left the event. The people who stayed, I was informed, did not get fed till 10:30 p.m. at night. It was a hot mess. And listen, it's not the way you're going to win me over, okay? You're not going to make me hangry and deprive me of wine. And above all, I just really can't stand inefficient people. And I thought that it was just super amateur. How can you not plan an event for 200 people? Come on. Total Bush League. But one thing that is as sure as death and taxes in my job is me having to defend people I don't like, from drama queens on the right or the left who don't have their facts straight and who too easily buy into media hysteria. And alas, such is the case today. RFK Jr. has been called anti-vaccine, a conspiracy theorist, a hypocrite, a power-hungry narcissist, and even a threat to public health. And some of these things very well may be true. This picture has been going viral and it does make me giggle. It's a photo of RFK Jr. on a private plane with Elon Musk and Donald Trump Jr. and they're eating McDonald's. And obviously people think this is highly hypocritical because he has been so critical of some of the products that McDonald's uses and serves, such as seed oils. Somebody with the picture said RFK Jr. can't become full MAGA until the McDonald hazing ritual is complete. And he does look rather guilty here. He's caught red-handed with a burger and a Coke. I don't know, it's pretty funny. For time's sake and also for YouTube censorship issues, I'm not going to get super in depth on the whole subject matter of vaccines today. I am not an expert on this subject whatsoever, but I will say that for the critics who are calling RFK Jr. anti-vaccine, that is a smear. In reality, his views on the subject are pretty nuanced and reasonable. In summary, he has raised questions about the testing of these products, claiming that they should be subject to more rigorous controlled trials. He's argued for greater transparency in the process that's used to approve them. He has criticized the fact that our government created a liability shield for these products in the late 80s, which I would also join him in. He has talked about the schedule of these products and suggested that it may not adequately account for individual variability and could potentially contribute to health issues. And most importantly, he has pointed to conflicts of interest in public health agencies, alleging that regulatory agencies like the CDC and the FDA have conflicts of interest due to their relationship with many of these companies. So yeah, I would not define that as anti-vax. Perhaps there are other things he has said that would lead people to believe that. But as a whole, this really seems to be something that's been really overblown in order to smear him and detract from his credibility. I want to say on record that liability shields from the government should not exist, period. Like, it would be corrupt for them to do that for any product that's out there. There's nothing free market or capitalist about that whatsoever. But it's even more heinous when they do it for a product that the government is practically forcing people to put in their bodies. It's a huge violation of bodily autonomy. And I don't know how any my body, my choice people can disagree with that with a straight face. If you do, you have been programmed. Furthermore, if the product is good, then better transparency and more testing on the process and products themselves would only encourage future consumption. Like, thou doth protest too much here, honestly. I saw this clip of RFK Jr. talking about his previous work, trying to get mercury out of fish and comparing it to the attacks that he has faced on this issue in particular. And I thought he put this very well.
I spent 30 years trying to get mercury out of the fish in this country, and nobody ever called me anti-fish.
So yeah, I just think, needless to say, being critical of something, wanting more accountability around it does not make you anti the product or service in question. It often just means you want a higher standard. And people who disagree with that are typically people who are profiting off the status quo. You can see the exact same thing at play when we talk about the need for police to have accountability and reform. The people who are so against it will say, oh, you're against police, you're anti-police. But no, actually, most of the time, the people saying this want police reform not only for the general public, but also for the good police. I think that same principle would apply here. Furthermore, conflicts of interest between regulatory agencies and corporations should concern everyone. The Democrats have massive egg on their face here with this critique. Oh, you're anti-corporations controlling the government. You're so worried about an oligarchy, except for when someone actually tries to do something about it. Pipe down. You are deeply unserious. But it seems the masses have been successfully riled up over RFK Jr. Take the responses to this video of his, which I'll roll first.
This is what most Americans innocently put into their bodies these days, and most alarmingly, into the bodies of their children. And it's no coincidence that Americans die earlier than Canadians or Germans or Italians or Japanese or Koreans or Australians or most any other comparable country.
People were pressed over this video. It went viral on Twitter, and I'm not going to lie, the responses to it were often quite funny. This person said, F that, I'll go to war if you take my Cheez-Its. I love the OG poster of the video said, you'll die of a heart disease or diabetes long before that. Another person said, it ain't the food, it's the guns, and weird ass boy better leave my Doritos and Welch's alone. They are so defensive over their gross products. And it really does make me laugh because these are assumedly grown adults who are making these comments in reaction to this video. But the reactions remind me exactly of those my stepdaughters have had to some of this. I was in Washington, D.C., I guess a month or two ago. I think I posted about it here, but I went up for a big MAHA hearing in the Senate where RFK Jr. and many other people testified about the problems that are in play right now between our regulatory agencies and big pharma and big ag and even the scientific public health academia world. And I learned a lot. I've already kind of been a pretty crunchy granola person when it comes to nutrition and food. I've been very anti companies like Monsanto and the government's very cozy relationship with them that essentially props them up when they're supposed to be regulating them. But I learned even more at that hearing, particularly from some of the people who testified, like Dr. Casey Means and Callie Means. And so I came home really wanting to do a better job of eating clean and cooking from scratch. And I started trying to enforce this in my household. And my 7 and 9-year-old stepdaughters were not having it. They ate a few of my cooked from scratch things for a few days. They tried to play along, but in the end, they really wanted to go back to their Fruit Loops. And I would even joke with them, do you want the healthy, muffin made from scratch, or do you want the Poison-O's? And they were like, Poison-O's! And now it's just a running joke in our household where literally in the mornings they request Poison-O's. So I've lost that battle with these kids. But there should be a difference in the way kids respond to some of these ideas versus adults. And yet there is so little light between them. And I'm going to say this, I think it's because a lot of you are addicted to sugar and you are behaving as an addict would be expected to behave when their choice of substance is being taken away from them. Another person in the comments said, all these claims and not a single resource or scientific study provided to back them up. But this kind of critique actually gets at the heart of what many of the people have been saying in the MAHA movement, which is that the studies are corrupted. They're paid for. They're bought off. Many of the scientists and experts that are authoring them have problematic financial relationships with the companies that profit from them writing favorable reviews and studies of their products. This is a scam and the jig is up. Is RFK Jr. right about everything he says in this video? Probably not. Politicians are rarely right about everything. As my friend Isaac said on Twitter, if I could sum up RFK's worldview in a sentence, it's that correlation does not equal causation, always and forever, and especially when the government or big corporations are involved. But on the overarching issues, he and the MAHA movement are correct. Collusion between the regulatory agencies and pharma and big ag and academia and public health is a tremendous, huge problem. It is preventing Americans from being educated and being able to make adequate decisions about their own health. Americans are getting sicker, even while we spend a lot more money on healthcare every single year. And while they pay people off to make bogus studies claiming the sky is red, the people are simply no longer buying it. They know they're getting sicker. They know there's something wrong with the food. They know that there is this collusion happening behind the scenes. And some of the growth in these chronic conditions absolutely do trace back to our food, our medicine, our healthcare system, and our government. And if you have an issue with someone cleaning that up, again, you're probably one of the people profiting off the status quo. And because these types of people have had control of the narrative for so long, they have had such a locus of power over our institutions and over our media, they think that they can keep gaslighting people and censoring them and smearing them and convincing them that the reality they're living with is not true. But watch this clip of Dr. Casey Means on Bill Maher recently, where she pushes back on many of these things, and she has a resounding applause from the audience because even left-wing audiences are waking up to this fact. You're not going to continue to pull the wool over people's eyes.
People kind of look at you like you're crazy because I think they just are in this world of doctors know everything. And I think you're telling us in medical school you learn doctors don't. I always say, if they know everything, why do you always have to get a second opinion?
Well, if they knew everything.
You're saying it's an opinion. And by the way, the second one never matches the first one. They're always guessing. I'm not saying they're corrupt, although there is some of that.
If they knew everything, then why would we be spending $4.5 trillion per year on healthcare costs and life expectancy is going down in the United States? Why are 80% of healthcare costs going towards chronic illnesses that are rooted in diet and lifestyle, yet at the vast majority of American medical schools, doctors in training are not taking a single nutrition course. And so you have to ask these questions. If we were crushing it, we would not be spending 2x every other country in the entire world and have the lowest life expectancy of any developed country in the entire world. We are the sickest of the top 11 high-income countries in the world. We have the highest infant and maternal mortality rates, and our life expectancy is 10 years less than our friends in Japan and Switzerland. Right now, according to the Journal of American Medical Association, the average American man in America, age 73 is their life expectancy. It is 83 in Japan and Switzerland. This is something we should all be outraged about. And only one party in our election cycle this year was talking about chronic illness. The words chronic illness, as far as I know, never came out of the Harris campaign's mouth. And I think that was a misstep because Americans are, I think, tired of being gaslit about the fact that there's not a problem right now. And when we look around us, and we know there is. And Trump has asked RFK to do 3 simple things. He's asked to get the corruption out of the U.S. health agencies, produce uncompromised evidence-based research for our health guidelines, and reverse the trends of the chronic disease epidemic in 2 years for children and adults so that we can show up for our 250th anniversary of America stronger than ever. That sounds pretty good to me.
This is fundamentally why people do not trust the left anymore. They don't trust our institutions. That trust has been broken, and rightfully so. As my friend Mary Catherine Ham said on Twitter, listen to the doctors and experts just doesn't hit like it used to, because the doctors and experts were shown time and time again to be ideologically cloistered, cronied up, censorious, and wrong. There were doctors and experts and non-experts who got it right during the COVID era, is what she's referring to, and didn't lie. I will trust them. Another person on Twitter said, spitting out my coffee after reading this New York Times, quote, fact check of RFK Jr. And they wrote, Mr. Kennedy has singled out Fruit Loops as an example of a product with too many artificial ingredients, questioning why the Canadian version has fewer than the US version. But he was wrong. The ingredient list is roughly the same, although Canada's has natural colorings made from blueberries and carrots, while the US product contains red dye 40, yellow 5, and blue 1, as well as, guys, I cannot say these words, some chemicals, or BHT, a lab-made chemical that is used for freshness according to the ingredient label. Like, how is this your fact check? You're literally proving what he said correct in your fact check, but you're just writing that he's incorrect. And the crazy thing is that a not insignificant portion of your readers will read that and just nod right along with you, because Americans are functionally illiterate these days, and because they are such NPCs that they just go along with whatever their media source or whatever their political party or whatever politician they like is telling them. And like, you can see this arrogance on full display. Here's Senator Elizabeth Warren. She said RFK Jr. poses a danger to public health, scientific research, medicine, and healthcare coverage for millions. He wants to stop parents from protecting their babies from measles, and his ideas would welcome the return of polio. I have a lot of questions for his Senate hearing. Like, lady, what are you talking about? He has proposed no such thing. And then I love that this other person on Twitter quote tweeted Elizabeth Warren and said, what an odd thing for her to say. And he posted a screenshot from Open Secrets, which is a website where you can see people's political donations. And it says top 20 member recipients of money from pharmaceuticals or health products from 2019 to 2020. And Elizabeth Warren is in the top 3. She accepted almost $1 million, $821,941. Isn't that interesting? So yeah, if you're mad about RFK Jr., if you think he's not qualified, if you think he's anti-science, just know the only reason that he is in the position he's in right now, the only reason he has the power he is about to access is because of all of you, because of the game you tried to run for the past 4 years and long before that, if we're being honest. This woman on Twitter said, if you wore a mask for years, took a selfie of your COVID vax, believed it was safer to sit at home and lock down than go to the gym, you don't get to call RFK a science-denying kook. Like, seriously, I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen with RFK Jr. in charge of HHS? Do you think he might do something crazy, like fund experimental gain-of-function research in China laboratories and cause a global pandemic? Like, you don't think that could happen to you? Like, it is crazy to me for people who had Dr. Fauci candles to be wringing their hands over this. And for people who believe things like this to be trying to tell us that we're anti-science kooks.
There's obviously a lot of soul searching right now going on within the Democratic Party, and that's a good thing. But what I worry about is that in the course of all that soul searching, some Democrats might reach the wrong sweeping conclusions. And there are a lot of issues that fall into that bucket. But one in particular that stuck out to me is transgender rights. Republicans spent hundreds of millions of dollars on anti-trans ads this election cycle, including one that showed Vice President Harris talking about government funding for gender-reaffirming care for prisoners and detainees. If that sounds like a particularly obscure issue, it is, because it applies to a tiny group of people. And it's also a policy that, by the way, was in place during the first Trump presidency. Another one of the lines that ran over and over again in those ads and throughout right-wing media is this idea that America is faced with a crisis of boys playing in girls' sports. Now, these ads created this perception that the issues of trans kids playing sports was dominating schools across the country, which is completely false. Some people got pulled into that argument. I mean, immediately after the election, Congressman Seth Moulton told the New York Times that, quote, Democrats spend way too much time trying not to offend anyone rather than being brutally honest about the challenges many Americans face. I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete. But as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. And then last weekend, Congressman Moulton came on this network to discuss those comments.
I was just speaking authentically as a dad about one of many issues where I think we're just out of touch with the majority of voters. And I stand by my position. You know, maybe I didn't get all the words exactly right. But the point is that the backlash I've received proves my point that we can't even have these discussions as a party.
Look, reflection is good. But if that were actually an issue at thousands of schools across the country, it would be worthy of a debate. But there are just incredibly few examples of transgender girls playing in youth sports. And when we see those examples, there isn't evidence that these kids are a threat to safety or fairness.
Democrats have brought all of this down on their own heads because they actually hate science. They hate rigorous testing. They hate being open to new ideas. They hate being challenged. You see that throughout every facet of their agenda and platform and in every single way that they behave and approach contentious issues these days. As my friend Zaid said on Twitter, amidst every 1,000 op-eds about how Trump is Hitler and going to end democracy, can we get 4 or 5 op-eds about how the Democratic Party is deathly scared of debate and competition and accountability, i.e. democracy, to the point it tried a weekend at Bernie's, which made me laugh out loud because they did. They literally did try to weekend at Bernie's us with Biden. That was insane. So yeah, they are really, really mad that their house of cards is falling right now and that they're going to have their orthodoxies challenged and that they're going to have to actually be transparent and that if their ideas don't hold up to sunlight, they might actually get overturned and somebody else's might outcompete them. Make no mistake, that is what the hysteria over RFK Jr. boils down to. Like I said, I have plenty of critiques I could offer of him. It doesn't really matter at this point. But my critiques of him are not the same as the people who are like coming out in force against MAHA. As I've said all along, there's going to be a lot of things Trump does that I don't like. There's going to be nominees I don't like, but there's going to be good things too. I'm sure RFK Jr. is going to do a lot I don't like in this position if he is confirmed. But he seems to have a number of good ideas that I absolutely could support as a libertarian, as a genuine free market capitalist, as a limited government like stalwart. So why would I not cheer on good progress that we can get in this administration, even while standing against things that I disagree with? That's just stupid. That's not how you actually achieve good things in politics. That's how people behave when they want to be dictators. And really, on this issue in particular, it is so weird to watch the parties flip like this, when what should be happening is bipartisanship. Like RFK Jr. is a Democrat. Democrats would have agreed with the vast majority of the things that he is saying right now until he was affiliated with Trump, and now they disagree. And I mean, for what it's worth, the same is true of people who are in the MAGA crowd who hated all of this kind of stuff when it was Michelle Obama trying to push it and now love it. But I would say that's progress. That's good. That means that when it comes to these issues, we have made traction with educating the grassroots, with equipping them, with building consensus, with creating a foundation where people can come together. And now we should be at a point where we can start taking meaningful actions against these problems, which are big, right? These are substantial, big, entrenched problems. It's going to take a lot of support to actually undo much of the corruption. But instead of being glad that Republicans have moved on these issues, the left is just angry and bitter and mad and calling them hypocrites, even while failing to recognize their own hypocrisy here. Like this person said, the same people who threw tantrums at the idea of regulations of gas stoves and encouraging to cut back on red meat are now completely on board with food regulation. Hilarious. They actually really aren't on board with food regulation, and this is in no way an apples to apples comparison, but I'll come back to that in a minute. Another person said, remember when Michelle Obama tried to make our food healthier and conservatives collectively wet their pants over it? Like, yeah, I do. I remember that. That was not smart of them. That was not good. But like, as Dale Carnegie says in How to Win Friends and Influence People, like cheer every improvement, cheer small improvements. If you want people to move from being ideologically here to way over here or way over here, then you have to cheer every bit of progress that they make. These people don't have the first clue about how to actually influence people and move them to their way of thinking because they don't think they should have to. They think they should just get to censor you and shut you up and label you as a freak and disregard you. And for what it's worth, many of the actual proposals that I'm hearing pushed under this whole MAHA label are pretty good. Like, I wouldn't be defending regulations ever, right? I'm a true capitalist. I hate regulations, but it is super weird that the party that loves them and that cried when Chevron got overturned, limiting their power and the president's ability to just wield them against the people, is suddenly so concerned about regulations against food products that they were literally lobbying against not 2 years ago. So yeah, if you're on the left, I don't want to hear you ever complain about regulations, like be so serious. But secondarily, regulations are not what I'm hearing proposed. What I'm actually hearing proposed is education. It's cutting off corrupt government pipelines between private industry and the regulatory agencies. It's getting back to an actual standard when it comes to science that we are funding. It's arming Americans with the tools they need to make better healthcare decisions, which not only includes educating them, it also includes healthcare reforms, like expanding HSA access so that people can get control of their healthcare dollars back. Like, the people who are criticizing this aren't even bothering to look into what's being proposed. They're just posting actual fake news. Like, look at this account. It says, breaking, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. allegedly intends to require Coca-Cola to begin using cane sugar instead of high fructose corn syrup as HHS secretary. But it got community noted on Twitter. I love their community notes program. And the community note says, RFK has said that there is too much sugar in food, especially from corn syrup, but he hasn't said he will regulate Coca-Cola into removing it. And then it goes on to note that corn syrup is used in America because corn farmers are heavily subsidized, making corn syrup cheaper than sugar. And like, this is what I really think is so dumb. I see so many people that are like arguing against him in the comments saying like, you're just going to make food really expensive. There's a reason like healthier food is more expensive, but they don't understand that that reason is because we are subsidizing the crap. They are taking your tax dollars. They are giving them to the corn lobby, to the dairy lobby. They are giving them to big ag, which then comes and pushes them into your food. And it's cheaper on the front end because you're already subsidizing and paying for it on the back end. Like, you are subsidizing your own healthcare decline. And if you remove those subsidies and those crappy products actually have to compete in the market against the good products, what you're going to see is the good products start to succeed. This is basic supply and demand. It's basic capitalism. It's basic economics 101. And I am so sick of the numerous people in this country who refuse to learn the basics of economics and continue trying to participate in politics without them. Just stop. You hurt people because of your own ignorance. And if you want to deep dive into this corruption, guys, I did a huge lift. I went way into this about, 3 years ago now. I'll link it in the show notes. I went into how big ag is making us sick. I went into how corrupt this pipeline is. I went into how not only the government subsidizes them, but how then they push false nutrition information to the American people that prevents them from being able to make good decisions. We don't have to ban things. We don't have to regulate things. We just simply need to stop funding the bad things. We need to stop lying to the people. We need to stop giving our tax dollars to corrupt fake scientists to push propaganda. As Sagar said on Twitter, been thinking about MAHA, the elements that will succeed and those most in line with libertarian MAGA is vax transparency, FDA, NIH regulatory shakeup, etc. Where I could see issues is banning chemicals, increasing regulations, which has intellectual roots in nanny-state liberalism. I would agree with that. And if he does that, I will be on the front lines to critique it and push back on it. But that's not what I'm hearing. And I'm pretty plugged into this movement in DC. I'm working with many of the institutions. I know the policies that are coming down the pipeline. That's simply not what I'm seeing coming across my desk. If we just simply educate Americans, they will make better choices. Americans want to be healthy. They want to do right by themselves and their kids. It's not that Americans are stupid or lazy or just love their crap food so much. If you look at what happened around smoking in this country, that's a really good example where we didn't come in and ban smoking, but the Surgeon General did start issuing warnings. He did start educating Americans about the harmful effects of it. We then saw private businesses make decisions to start banning it on their private property. That's all very free market, very limited government. This same sort of criteria could be applied and followed here. Senator Mike Lee said on Twitter, please share this post if you'd be more likely to eat at a restaurant chain that bans seed oils and use beef tallow instead. And it's going viral because yes, people want to choose the better options. And when that signal is able to get through to the market, you will see the market adapt. But right now that signal is being skewed. It's being bounced off bad government policy. Like, it's really simple. Here's another guy who's trying to argue on Twitter and say, you think that we should allow high fructose corn syrup in our food? Yeah, I think we should allow it. I don't think this is something the government has to come in and ban. If we just stop freaking subsidizing it, the problem's going to solve itself. Will RFK Jr. get everything right? Probably not. Is he any less qualified than our current health secretary? No. Like, LOLOL to the people acting like Trump is just picking these wild card people with no experience. Like, newsflash, most political appointments are always about who you're buddies with, who you know. Like, most of these people are not experts. I'm pretty sure Mayor Pete was made Secretary of Transportation because he agreed to drop out and help Biden win, and he liked trains. The current health secretary has a background as a lawyer, which is pretty similar to what RFK's background is. So sorry, all of the hysteria, all of the critiques, even though I don't really love RFK Jr., are simply not landing for me. You need to be wary of people who use censorship to control the narrative. You need to be wary of people who tell you that you aren't smart enough to make decisions for your own health. These people, the scientists, the public health bureaucrats, the regulators, they are like the Wizard in Oz, and they are furious that someone is about to pull the curtain back. All right, guys, I hope you like this episode. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you've not already, and if you want even more content, you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok.